So we are back here in Vital with the default preset, and we can start by using two oscillators and just detune them against each other, just to get some movement in there. And we are going to use a third oscillator and just use a sine wave there and pitch this down 1 octave. And we can also use unison on one of these oscillators. Now, if you've seen my other videos, you know that I like to cut the high end, so we are going to do that now. And we are just going to use filter 1 and route everything to this and cut the highs here. And now we can head over to the effects section and use some distortion to reintroduce some of the high end and give it a bit more grit. And after this, we can also use again a filter and just cut some of the highs. We can also use a compressor before that. I like to use this section here to sort of EQ it again and increase the lows for this sound and decrease the highs a bit. At the end we can add some reverb, fair amount of mix, and also make it a bit longer than the default setting here. And also I usually like to cut the highs. So at this point we already have a pretty nice Braams, but to make it a bit more interesting and more versatile, I like to use one of the macro knobs here and map this to the global pitch. So let's just do this, macro knob 1 and to the global voice transpose. I usually only like to change this by 1 or 2 semitones, and then we can create nice bends. This also sounds pretty interesting at the higher pitch. Or even higher. If you want this to be a bit more punchy, you can use an LFO and map this to the global pitch as well. Let's use LFO1 and again map this to the voice transpose. And by this way you can make the sound a bit more percussive and give it a really short hit at the beginning. Just make sure to use this in envelope mode. And play around with the setting here until you like it. And if you want to add more movement, you can also use LFOs to modulate the settings here. So we can use LFO1, for instance, on the mid band and LFO3 on the highs and give them different shapes and different tempos maybe even. This way you can easily give the sound a bit more movement. Now I would also do some sort of post-processing here. So let's just grab an EQ and a compressor and also utility and a limiter at the end. So we can just make sure that everything below roughly 200 Hz is in mono. Use the compressor to catch the peaks. And use the EQ here to cut some of the lower mids again. And then push it a bit into the limiter. So I think that's a pretty nice Braam sound. If you have any feedback or requests, please let me know in the comments.